Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. I'm trying a bit of a different angle today, just trying to be a little bit more comfortable. Normally I stream directly face on, but I'm really weirdly angled for the computer, so I'm trying a bit of a different angle. Brianna's not joining us tonight. When she does, I'll likely stream the more conventional way, but I just wanted to try this out. I think it'll also make it a little bit easier for me to interact with you guys, but also to kind of go through our stories. And there's a lot to talk about tonight. Some crazy news, some good news, some bad news, but as always, there's tons to talk about. Tons to talk about. So how's everyone doing so far tonight? Hopefully lots of people join up. If you're new to the channel, if for whatever reason you saw this stream right away and you were like, I gotta click on this guy's live stream, be sure to click the subscribe button. If you have subscribed, be sure to click that bell. Clicking the bell, make sure that you get notifications when I post videos, which is one of the ways you can see them when YouTube doesn't feed you it via the algorithm. Samantha Sider has already said, just got first shot today, hoping I got that 5G chip. Well, Samantha, I don't know if that is a thing. I don't know if Mr. Gates is quite so advanced that he would make that happen, but I don't know. Maybe he will. Maybe he will make that happen. So, fingers crossed, I guess. But in all seriousness, I think that's fantastic. And I've been noticing, for those who follow the channel, but maybe don't follow it super closely, I am Canadian, right? And we are behind you guys when it comes to vaccinations. We are, quite a bit behind. We're not necessarily last in the world or anything. Like, we're not necessarily behind everybody. But, like, the fact of the matter is, like, whereas, what is it, like a fifth to almost a quarter of Americans are fully vaccinated, in Canada, it's well below 10. A lot of people have started to get their first shots, but for the most part, we have very few people fully vaccinated. And in most of Canada, it's still very much reserved for, like, older people, right? It's still very much reserved for senior citizens, people in certain industries, people with certain illnesses and what have you, that are being put to the front of the line because we don't have the capacity, at least as of yet, that the United States does, right? So, like, the fact of the matter is, we're still dealing with that. So, it's really great to see. Frustrating if I'm being honest, but it's fantastic to see you guys all getting it, you guys really getting to at least maybe sort of in some way have some partial return to normalcy, which we do not yet have. But, like, that's where we're at right now, right? Like, I'm seeing, like, I saw Kyle Kalinske, other YouTubers starting to get their shot, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic to see. Victoria says, oh no, I'm late, but the notification popped up. Well, that's good to see, at least. That's good to see that people are getting notified. Great to have people stop by. Don't worry about being late. One thing with the live streams, people often ask me this, is I take them down after airing. Most channels do that. We take the live streams down. But the reality is that I almost never ever delete them. I almost never ever delete the live streams. They are always sort of unlisted, which means that so long as you have the link to the stream, you can just go back and watch it. So if you get the notification, if I post it in the Discord, actually, while I'm here, everyone who's not a member of the Discord yet, check out the Discord. Invite people to the Discord. Oh, that was one of the things I was searching earlier. Let me see. Matt Gaetz is doing crazy stuff as per usual. So wanted to share that with you guys there. But basically, I'm seeing all these people get vaccines, and it's wild. So check out the Discord. It is a great place to hang out in between streams, in between my videos with other members of the channel, with other people that support the channel. Fantastic, fantastic place, I think. Biased as I am. Yes, for those who don't don't see, I'm wearing my TFC jersey tonight. Toronto FC. It's a soccer team in Major League Soccer, and they had a great victory tonight in the Champions League against the Mexican team Leon, and they're going on to the next round of the Champions League, which is great to see. Great to see. TFC came really close to winning the Champions League a couple years ago. They lost in a penalty shootout, but hopefully they'll be able to make a run. Lots to talk about tonight. One of the first things, and this is just blowing my mind because it's so crazy, because you know how rare it is on the channel that we say anything good about Trump or the Trump family. It's just not something we really do, right? Like we don't praise Donald Trump and company. We don't do it. But what you're seeing is that Ivanka Trump has been really quiet on social media, and she finally came out. Let me pull this up here. People are asking what I thought about the NDP convention. I was frustrated to some degree with the formatting and all of that, but in general, I was pretty happy with a lot of the resolutions passed. Andy and I, for my show Left Turn Canada, my new podcast, let me drop that. It's a Canadian-focused podcast. For those who like Canadian content, it is something to check out. Check that out. But we're going to be talking about that, and we're actually going to probably have an interview with Amy Kishek and some others who were some of the organizers around the Palestine resolution. And so I think that will be really nice to see, and I think a lot of people will get some enjoyment out of that. So if you're an American and you're kind of like, I don't know a lot about the Canadian left, all I get about Canada is like propaganda about Trudeau or whatnot, then like this is a good thing for you to check out, I think personally. So do check out my podcast. It is a freely accessible podcast. None of the episodes are gated. We do have a Patreon for it, but you can still support it, but just by watching. So this is Ivanka Trump. She's been very quiet on social media, and she came out on Instagram for the first time in a long time and actually did something good. She was like, I got the vaccine and I want others to get their vaccine. She says, today I got the shot. I hope that you do too. Thank you, Nurse Torres. Like, look, let's be real. Like, I know the bar is low with the Trump family, but like, they like, the vaccine has become politicized. The vaccine, especially among Trump Republicans, is seen as bad. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Existing conspiracy theories, like Samantha with with my I hope I got that 5G chip, and then John Barlich with the follow-up super chat saying, no, Samantha, it's the 6G chip. It's what I'm getting with the vax. Oh, hey, Christo, with them pulling the J&J vax, will skepticism go up as a result? Yes, it will. It will likely go up as a result for them with the temporary Johnson & Johnson vaccine pulling. Look, this stream's definitely getting demonetized with me talking about vaccine conspiracies. I don't think it'll get pulled down, at least, though. But, like, look, the fact of the matter is, like, let's be real, like, Trump supporters are not getting the vaccine as much. It's not like none of them are getting it. It's not like literally every skeptic is a Trumper and literally every person getting vaccinated is a Democrat. It's not quite so one-sided, right? It's not quite so, directly linked on party line. But there is definitely a correlation. And it's good that Ivanka Trump is using her profile, and she has, this has got 179,000 likes to get a shot. Like, get your damn shot, basically, right? Because the fact of the matter is, Republicans aren't doing it. They are not getting vaccinated. And I don't know what Ivanka's reach is with Republican men in particular, but Republican men in particular are not getting vaccinated. They're not. And so I think this is good. But what's wild about this is that I haven't seen any progressives call her out. But like, this is getting absolutely hammered by Trump supporters. It notes here, Ivanka's urging fell on unwilling ears. Her post quickly filled up with angry replies from Trump supporters, refusing to be vaccinated and suggesting a government conspiracy, despite the fact that the development of the vaccine began under and was promoted by former President Donald Trump himself. Like, look, Trump could have got the vaccine public, and he should have. Donald Trump really screwed it up, or maybe he meant to, but Trump messed it up when he didn't get the vaccine public. Pence got the vaccine public. Pence's wife, Karen, yes, her name is actually Karen, got the vaccine. The Obamas, I don't know if they've been vaccinated yet. They're a bit younger, but like all the former presidents got the vaccine. Biden and Harris got the vaccine publicly. Bernie did. AOC did. A lot of other Republicans did, right? They got the vaccines publicly. To try to say this is a good thing. It's going to save your life or save the lives of others, and it's going to make it so that we can all get back to normalcy at least a little bit quicker. Right? And exactly, Trump was vaccinated, and not only in private, not only behind the curtain, but they didn't tell anybody. Remember, I made a video on this. Let me see this. I made a video on this. Okay, I made a video. I made this video on March 1st. Trump got the vaccine and never told anybody. So back before he left the White House, so that has to be before January 20th. So, but when he was still president, he got the vaccine. And he never told anybody. Basically was like, yeah, it's not a big deal, I guess. Him and Ivanka got the shot and they didn't tell folks. Like, deeply irresponsible stuff, right? Deeply. Oh, sorry, not Ivanka, Melania. Brianna's just chilling in the background and she caught my mistake. Melania, excuse me, Trump's wife. And they didn't tell folks. And it's like, it's so irresponsible because at the end of the day, they're influential. They're deeply influential people. And I mean, look, the reality is that some Trumpers would have still been conspiratorial about it, but at least some would have been fine. Like, look at what they're saying now. And like, this could just be like Trumpism, but like, I'm losing respect for the Trump family so over this virtue signaling, said one poster. So, guys, getting a vaccine is virtue signaling now. Getting a vaccine is virtue signaling. Chris Wong said it's okay. Trump would like to mix up Ivanka and Melania too. No comment. No comment. First edition Yu-Gi-Oh says, I get my second dose of Moderna tomorrow. I think the microchips in them might be broken because I'm still a fat, lazy bum. First edition Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm sure you're great. And I love how every super chat thus far has been a riff on vaccine conspiracies. And the Mind of the North Star, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I very much appreciate it. If you guys want to support the channel on an ongoing basis, you can do so by becoming a member. Click the little join button. You can do it on Patreon as well. Both give you similar perks. Although joining here on YouTube gives you like YouTube specific perks. Like it gives you a little button here, highlights your name in green, makes it easier for you to stand out in chat, things like that. But thank you so much, Mind of the North Star. There's another one here. No thanks. With a 99% survival rate, I shall pass. With Bill Gates involved, I will not get one, said Rice44. Hell no, why would you post this, asked Kenny VV. Look, here's the thing. One, some of the variants are more dangerous than what we were originally seeing, right? Some of the variants are more dangerous. And so the fact of the matter is, like, it's not necessarily the case that it's 99%. First, additionally, it's not 99% for everyone. For some people, risks are much higher. And it's not just about you, it's also about others. So if you're a young, healthy person, you can still be absolutely devastated by COVID. Absolutely. And up to and including losing your life. Like, that is a thing. But the reality is that you don't necessarily, you won't necessarily face the full consequences until you pass it on to a loved one who maybe has immune deficiencies or is elderly or whatever, right? You know, like, and beyond that, right, we have to be clear. It's not just getting it and dying, which is a possibility, even for young, healthy people, rarer as it is. It's getting it and getting really sick. And we're not 100% sure yet on, like, the long-term effects of this illness. Maybe for most people, you get it and then you're done. Like, you get it and you're done forever with it. Like, you get COVID, you're sick for most people for, a few days, a couple weeks. You don't pass it on anymore. And for the most part, you can't catch it as easily, at least, and you move on. Like, maybe that's what it's like for everybody, but I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that there's not necessarily long-term consequences. Well, exactly, as Chris Wong says, even if you survive, you can have very serious lingering effects. And because this is relatively new as an illness, right? Like, we don't know. We don't know the long-term effects. So, like, this idea that it's like a 99% survival is ridiculous. Like, wow, it's extremely disappointing. Like, all these Trump supporters, nope, and please stop trying to manipulate us into doing so. It's surprising to see you doing this now that the left, like the left in Hollywood have been. Again, like, all these people are like, it's manipulation, it's propaganda. But it's like, they're just trying to save your life. Like, again, I hate having to even say neutral things about, like, these Republican ghouls. But my God, guys, like, Mitch McConnell has to go out there, like, multiple times a week now, it seems, to specifically talk to Republican men and basically beg them to get vaccinated. Right? He basically has to beg them. He has to go out there and say, please, for the love of God, get vaccinated. And these men are like, nah, bro, nah. I'll eat some oranges and then I won't need to. It's wild.
Or do CrossFit.
Yeah, or like Bree was saying, Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not just men. There's a lot of women in this, but like Marjorie Taylor Greene's like, my COVID health plan is eating right and doing CrossFit, basically. It's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. Yeah, the real American. I would say that there's at least a non-zero chance that it is some sort of bot account. So again, for the most part, vaccine hesitancy is down. But white Republicans are the most likely to not want to get it. White Republicans are far more likely than any other group to reject it. There are some other groups historically, for legitimate reasons, a lot of marginalized groups who are skeptical of the medical establishment. But white Republicans, a group that's basically never been discriminated against through the medical establishment, somehow thinks it's a target against them. So it says here, according to Civics, 56% of white Republicans said they were either unsure or would not take a COVID-19 vaccine if it were available to them, compared to 31% of Black Americans, 30% of Latino Americans, and just 7% of white Democrats. So look, I'm not going to judge people of color. I'm not. Ultimately, you got to get the vaccine. But, like, I understand, I am sympathetic, at least initially, with a lot of marginalized groups in how they have historically been essentially punished for trusting the medical establishment, because a lot of them, in a lot of ways, when it came to doctors and these sorts of things, often found themselves attacked, how often found themselves the subject of experimentation and these sorts of things, right? So, but there's no excuse for white people. There's really no excuse. And so look at that. Look at the gap. Look at the gap. Absolutely wild. Look, there was some partisan, look, to be fair, when Trump was president, there were fewer Democrats that wanted to take the vaccine. Yeah, and Jay here, some people are noting, like, long COVID is a thing. There are some people, it's rare, but there are some people that get it, and the symptoms are not, one and done. It's not like you get it for 2 weeks and you're done. For some people, it's an ongoing, unceasing process, right? Like, that's the reality. Folks, if you can, click the like button, and also tell me how much you hate Matt Gaetz in the chat. When you leave comments in the chat and you click the like button, it helps introduce more people to the stream, which maybe we'll get more people to join our community, which is always great to see. So, like, that's like, look, like, as little as I want to do it, the fact of the matter is, they're like, we have to give credit where credit is due and note that some Republicans are trying to get people to get vaccinated, but it doesn't look like the Republican movement is willing to do it. And there are a lot of Republicans that are basically saying, like, well, they're basically saying nothing, right? They're likely getting vaccinated. They're likely ensuring that their kids, if they're, like, old enough, or their partners, their parents, their, older relatives are getting vaccinated. But, like, when push comes to shove, like, a lot of these Republicans are staying silent because they don't want to be anti-vaxxers. They don't want to come out and directly attack the vaccine, but then they also don't want to anger the MAGA base. So they're likely getting vaccinated and just not talking about it, not publicizing it. They want the best of both worlds. And that's disgusting, because these people are not just, like, idiots that are, like, just, like, wrong. Like, some of these people are actively creating a scenario where, like, they're actively creating a scenario where, like, this distrust in science can fester, right? Can fester. Want to give a little bit of good news here. One thing is, we have some good news here, which is that, where is this? Where's that? I had something I wanted to share here. there's some polling out of Brazil, which is great to see. So there's some new polling that has Lula up in Brazil. Now, Lula was the former president of Brazil who was basically rung up on like a bogus charges against him, just like the most ridiculous things. And that in part allowed Bolsonaro, just racist, anti-indigenous, homophobic monster, to come to power in Brazil, right? And if you guys remember, and rest in peace, Michael Brooks, friend of the show, everyone loved Michael Brooks. Many of you likely know who Michael Brooks is, or who he was, but he was a champion of Lula and a champion of democratic socialism in Brazil. And after spending time in prison, again, just with the most bullshit, like cooked up, trumped up charges against him, is now free, and he's almost certainly the front runner to win again for president. Because the next election is scheduled for about a year and a bit away. It's still a whiles away. But this poll shows that in a hypothetical election, that Lula would win about 60-40. Silver Princess says, as an ICU nurse, 30% of the patients who died from COVID in my ward, As an ICU nurse, 30% of the patients who died from COVID in my ward were 20 to 40 years old. No comorbidities. If the virus doesn't kill your lungs, the inflammatory response by your immune system will. I mean, Silver Princess, thank you so much for sharing that. And first of all, everyone say thanks to Silver Princess for being a literal goddamn hero, and to all of her colleagues for putting their asses on the line for us. The truly essential workers, YouTubers, can work from home. So thank you so much for that. But look, fundamentally, you're right. You're right that, while the stories we've often heard and like a lot of the statistics really do show that like maybe this is affecting older folks more than younger folks, there are plenty of young people who pass away from this. Or even if they don't pass away, end up in your ICU, end up in hospital. And that's not a good experience, right? Look, like there were nurses and doctors and other medical professionals who were telling these stories going all the way back to last year. I remember covering them last summer, of people just not believing it. People just not believing it, guys. Just being like it's a hoax. It's being used by the Democrats to shut down the economy, so Donald Trump has lower job numbers and the stock market or whatever, and so Joe Biden can win. Remember Ted Cruz even. Ted Cruz was basically spreading this conspiracy that if the Democrats win in November, then as soon as Joe Biden becomes president, or as soon as the election is over, this will stop being an issue for the Democrats, basically implying that it's being either totally manufactured or at least exaggerated with a view to with a view to creating this sort of like economic situation, right? Like that's where we're at. So the fact of the matter is, like, these people would go into the hospital and would be fighting with doctors and nurses. They would go in and be fighting with the doctors and nurses trying to save their lives. because they were told by their weird Facebook groups and by Q people and all these other goddamn ghouls that I don't know, like somehow this was all a conspiracy, and now they're passing away. And so they're not only terrified, but they're also they're angry and they're confused in a way that they wouldn't have been if they believed in it. And so it's not now just that, you're dealing with this illness. It's that all of a sudden this thing that you thought was either not a big deal or totally fake is actually 100% real. And it got you, right? For all the new folks joining, getting a good amount of people hopping in, be sure to click the like button. Be sure to stick around. If you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button. We cover Canadian or we cover American politics from a daily perspective from the left. So if you like that, you'll like this channel. Click that link, and happy to have you aboard. So good news out of Brazil. It's good news out of Brazil. Again, our friend Michael Brooks, who for so long was fighting for Lula's freedom and fighting for the cause of democratic socialism beyond American borders, is probably smiling wherever he is right now. So I really appreciate being able to share that good news with you guys. Okay. Want to talk a little bit about Matt Gaetz for those who have been following the story. Apparently, he is doubling and tripling down. So, not only is he not going to be silent, but apparently he's buying attack ads. The dude is going to buy attack ads, apparently. Representative Matt Gaetz announces ad buy to fight back against CNN allegations. So, he's going to be featuring a 30-second ad in his district, but also nationwide, specifically to hit back against the fake news media. Representative Matt Gaetz on Wednesday announced a 6-figure ad buy for a spot that targets CNN as he fights to save his political career amid sex trafficking allegations. The new 30-second ad will be featured in the Florida Republicans' congressional district and nationally on select cable networks, according to his statements from Gaetz' congressional campaign. The ad marks the beginning of Gaetz' counteroffensive as he fights back against a multi-week fake news cycle against him. Now we see what's really behind all of this. Democratic Party and media-driven smears aimed at taking out a congressman of the United States. A spokesman for the Friends of Matt Gaetz said about the statement. I'm surprised they could even add an S to that. I'm surprised it wouldn't just be friend of Matt Gaetz, because he doesn't have very many. Lula's a good guy. Look, Brazil's a country with a lot of challenges, and Lula wasn't perfect, but Lula's a good guy. And will make Brazil significantly better off for the diverse working class of that country than Bolsonaro, certainly. So basically, Gaetz is trying to use this attack ad to continue to paint any of his opponents as sort of a organized fake news attack against him. That fake news is coming for Matt Gaetz. And so you need to be ready as conservatives to defend him. And so what Gaetz is doing here is taking what is a very established personal case against him. A case that includes everything from, sleeping with a minor and taking that minor girl across state lines, which is trafficking, to a potential trip to the Bahamas where women were trafficked there as sex workers. Now, they were women, I believe, in that case, but still, it is trafficking. To paying women for sex, which in and of itself, I'm not against. I think sex work should be legal. I think prostitution should be legal. Sex work should be legal, but it isn't, and it's just another pattern of like rich, powerful men getting away with doing the things that like regular people would get in a lot of trouble for. And so all of this is legitimate. Look, Gates hasn't been convicted. That's fair. You can fairly say that Gates has not been convicted. But the reality is, the fundamental reality is, this investigation is serious. I talked about it last night. His phone was seized. Matt Gaetz' phone was seized, right? They didn't just take his phone for funsies, right? They didn't just take his phone just for the kicks. The DOJ and the FBI do not just seize people's phones without cause. You actually need to have cause to search people's phones. You have to have cause. You cannot just take someone's phone just because you have a hunch. And I'm guessing that sitting Congress people, that people in Congress are likely, if not formally protected, right? If not formally protected, then at least the bar would be very high, I would suggest, for people are saying there's a new article on Matt Gaetz here. It's sort of building off the previous things we've talked about, where Joel Greenberg and Matt Gaetz had a network of women they paid through Venmo, except now the network includes maybe dozens of young women and not the 3 or 4 that we had been talking about, including Vintage 99, who was a 99 referring to her birth year, and Vintage 99 was a child, a 17-year-old, when the encounter happened. So, like, look, this is a real story. This is a real story. Right? And the fact of the matter is, like, Gaetz is trying to make it into this broader case against the conservatives. And so you can see what he's doing. Right? You can see what he's doing. He's trying to take this very established case against him and then also say, look, it's not actually about me and the fact that under Donald Trump this investigation started. This is part of the culture war against conservatives. And that's what's happening here. Yes, some of these are a lot easier to tell. Gio is saying here, an examination of Greenberg's Venmo transaction shows dozens of suspicious and curiously titled payments. Some were as simple as ass or lipstick kiss mark, which is different than what we saw last time, where all the payments were titled tuition or school, as if Matt Gaetz and Joel Greenberg were philanthropists just paying the tuition of random young women on the internet. And so, yeah, man, Emma, you're right. He's definitely in a sense, they're definitely in a sense imitating Trump. They're definitely in a sense imitating Trump, where the fact is that like, you have these individual investigations against you, and the way you protect yourself is by making your personal criminal issues part of the culture war. So when Gaetz gave that speech at the women's event, because I'll remind you, Matt Gaetz was still invited to speak at a women, like basically a female Trump supporter event. He was invited to speak at it, but like the fact of the matter is, he was basically, they're coming at me because I'm an outspoken conservative. It's not because I'm clearly some kind of like creepy guy who's done creepy things. It's because I'm an outspoken conservative and they're coming at me. Like, that's how you do it. And so that's why Gaetz is buying ads. In the traditional... Are people trying to make comparisons to Hunter Biden here? Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. But like, look, like the traditional way to do this is to shut the hell up, lawyer up, and like hide away. And if you do put anything out into the media, it's like carefully written via your lawyer. But Gaetz, I guess his strategy is, I'm going to make this about the meta politics. So it's not about whether or not I had sex with a 17-year-old and trafficked her. It's not about that. It's actually about how the left and CNN and the Democrats want to take me down because I am one of the high-profile Trump supporters, and they want to get rid of me, and they want to get rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they want to get rid of all of us. And so for me, the way they're doing that is they're making up stories about like this issue. Look, we've been critical of CNN on this channel, especially back during the Democratic primary, but there's a difference between CNN lying about Bernie Sanders' socialism and them simply reporting what they found on Matt Gaetz. There's a difference between them saying Medicare for all is unfeasible, which is clearly an opinion, or Matt Gaetz is under investigation and here's what we know. One of those things is factual reporting, whether you want the story to be covered or not, and one of them is just pure ideological attack, right? And so there's still value in these traditional news outlets, even if on their editorial line they are unfair to progressives and other people like that, right? Look, we're not even talking about Nestor anymore. That's the thing. For those who don't remember, I'm just going to grab some water. I'll be right back just real quick. But for those who don't recall, like, Nestor is now he's an adult, but he was a boy living with Matt Gaetz who has no biological or legal relationship with Matt Gaetz, but whom Matt Gaetz called his son. Now, the actual relationship between the two, I believe, is that he is the brother of a former Matt Gaetz girlfriend. And it's sort of like like he took him in. But it's not really a father-son relationship, and it's weird, right? And so a lot of people's assumption of Nestor was that, you know, Matt Gaetz was secretly gay or was secretly attracted to men and had this young live-in boy, and that to rationalize it, they created this scenario where actually he's Matt Gaetz's son. Like they're not biologically related, but like they're connected through like this emotional relationship, and Gates sees him as a son and Nestor sees Gates as a father and all these sorts of things. And like, look, I don't know. I think that this definitely has sort of buried the Nestor story. And I almost wonder that given all the dirt we've been getting, it's weird that we haven't gotten any dirt on Nestor, right? And so maybe, guys, crazier things would happen that like the Nestor story is actually true. Like maybe Matt Gaetz is a monster, but he's not a monster in the way we thought. Like he's not a monster in the way we thought where he's awful to Nestor. He's just a monster in he's just a monster to all these women that he's having these relationships with. I don't know. But we haven't heard much about Nestor. But again, like, look, he doesn't need a wingman. He has Joel Greenberg. Right? Well, that's the thing here. Like, people are saying, like, look, like, why is Gates putting so much here into targeting CNN when he's clearly in like so much legal trouble? And again, you might ultimately be skeptical about whether he's going to go down for this. I think some people are, because they just kind of know from personal experience that the rich and wealthy and well-connected rarely face consequences for their actions, right? Like people sort of have that as an instinct, that like rich people just get away with stuff. But like the fact of the matter is, like, look, he's being, like, his phone was seized. And so clearly he's in trouble here. And he's spending a lot of his time attacking CNN and not worrying about his own legal pitfalls. Apparently, according to Chapo Trap House, that they say that they say that maybe Nestor was actually part of his ploy to connect with younger women. I wanted to talk a little bit about this, because this is another thing that's fucking horrendous. So we all know that in the age of COVID, there is rising hatred against Asian peoples in Canada and the USA, because from the outset, the narrative was, COVID came from China, and so that people who were Chinese were more likely to have it, or what have you. And so going all the way back to the earliest stages of COVID, there was rising discrimination and hatred, occasionally violence, against Asian Americans. Right? And then you had right-wing politicians like Donald Trump and many others start calling it the China virus, the Kung flu, saying that China lied, people died, all these sorts of things. And that even if you do, hypothetically, want to say China needs to be more accountable, the people that were being hurt were not the Chinese government, but anyone that, according to like white stereotypes, looked Chinese. Right? Like, if you look Chinese, then under Donald Trump's like model, you were like othered. And so going all the way back to the start of COVID, there was so much hatred. So much of it. And we saw it sort of bubble up. in the last little bit. With the attacks on Asian Americans, like literally just getting punched in the street. The attacks on the massage parlors in the United States a few weeks ago. Hatred against Asian Americans is on the rise. Right? Same thing here in Canada. For those who were at the NDP convention, we passed a motion on condemning hatred against Asian Canadians. And so, in a rare moment in this Senate, where Democrats and Republicans sort of could at least partially agree with one another, there was a vote on passing a bill aimed at targeting hate crimes against Asian Americans. And 6 Republicans voted against it. 6 Republicans in the Senate. There's going to be some in the House, but it's almost certainly going to pass the House if almost all Republicans in the Senate are voting for it. These 6 Republican ghouls voted against it. Tom Cotton, Cancun Cruz, Josh Hawley. I don't even know Marshall's name from Kansas, I assume. Rand Paul and Tommy Tuberville. These 6 guys voted against a bill to fight hatred against Asian people. That's wild. Like, look, you could think there's a lot of other awful Republicans that didn't that voted for this bill. So, like, you got to think of the 50 Republicans in the Senate. Think of them. And think about how they are all, almost without exception, awful. And then realize that 6 of those 50 are even worse than the others. And that's what you get here. Right? That's what you get here. And as I think it was Samantha in the chat, but other people, I believe, noted it as well. A good chunk of these people are considering a run for president. And a good chunk of these people have 100% leaned into all of the major right-wing conspiracies in recent since November. Right? All of them, to varying degrees, have 100% hopped on the Trump train. And have suggested that the election was stolen and all these sorts of things. Right? Now, Tom Cotton, I believe, was a bit of an exception. He actually opposed challenging the election results because he felt it would weaken the Electoral College. But all of these people, to varying degrees, have downplayed the coup attempt, have downplayed the election attempt, have downplayed Donald Trump's election lies or bought into them, have encouraged the coup, have spread lies about COVID, and in part because of a lot of those things, Asian Americans are being attacked. They're like, no, we're not going to support this bill. I want to see here. Let me see. Maybe Cruz. Let's see. Has he said anything about it? Yeah. So, did he say anything about why he did it? I want to see if he said anything. Because I'm curious. So, like, it doesn't seem, at least as of yet, I can't find a motivation. But the fact of the matter is that Ted Cruz and all these guys likely think that, one, they want to vote against almost every single thing the Democrats propose. Like, just without exception, they want to oppose everything. It's not simply, we disagree with the Democrats on almost everything, so we're going to vote against almost everything. That's like a reasonable argument you could make. But the fact of the matter is, Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, I believe, were the only Republicans to vote against every single one of Joe Biden's appointments. Every single one of Biden's appointments, I believe, were opposed by Cruz. That's... Or let me see here. Did he reject them all? Oh, sorry, excuse me. They each voted for 2 or 3, but there was a point where they were a perfect negative. So if you look here, Cruz and Hawley and Rick Scott, if you see that right here, I'll zoom in a little bit. They voted against that many appointments. Right? As opposed to, other Republicans, you can see some of the more moderate Republicans basically voted for everyone. You could see that, a good chunk of Republicans sort of split here. Like, look at some of these Republicans here. They sort of voted for 9 or 10. They were sort of in the middle, right? And these ghouls down here, you could see also, look, Tom Cotton, Rand Paul. So you can see a bit of a pattern. Tom Cotton, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Tommy Tuberville. Like, most of the people where they just voted against everything that Biden proposed. Right? And so it's no coincidence to me. So you might say that the strategy is, I want to paint myself as the principal resistor, and ironically, right, given how a lot of Dems, especially like the liberal, like neoliberals and all that, painted themselves as resistors after Donald Trump won. A lot of these Republicans seem to be doing the same thing, where they're very much saying, we are resisting the Democrats sort of without any filter. Like, there's actually no rationale behind our resistance, right? There's no rationale. Because if there was, they wouldn't be just so blanketly rejecting all these votes. Also, another thing here, this is some news. Our good friend Kyrsten Sinema. Do you guys remember this moment, right? Who here remembers this GIF of Kyrsten Sinema? Who here remembers this? That was her, of course, when the stimulus bill was being voted on. Bernie Sanders, led by Bernie, but some other people were on board, tried to override the parliamentarian, basically, and put the minimum wage back in the stimulus bill. The $15 by 2025 proposal. Right? Bernie Sanders wanted to do that. Now, you needed 60 votes. Actually, they didn't even get 50 because 8 Democrats voted against it, including this scumbag, Kyrsten Sinema, who is one of the 2 senators from Arizona. The other senator from Arizona, Mark Kelly, supported the $15 minimum wage. Right? Actually, I just want to, before we kind of go, Daniel with the generous support, as he said, it was for buying me a new water bottle. So guys, I guess if you want me to get a new water bottle or what have you, send over some super chats or something. I don't know. I do like my United Steelworker bottle. Brianna is a member of the United Steelworkers. And so I do like it. Although it is dented. I don't even know how that happened. But I think it makes it more ergonomic. And so the reality is that she's back on this, working with Mitt Romney, supposedly on an $11 minimum wage bill. So this is like the new thing. Kyrsten Sinema is back, and she wants us to settle for a minimum wage bill of $11. Now let's be clear. Let's be clear about this. 15 by 2025 is already the compromise. That is already the compromise. Right? 15 by 2025 is not enough. It's not. It is already the compromise position. Right? It's too slow. I get the argument. It's like, oh, you can't go too fast, blah, 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 small businesses, whatever. Like, I truly don't care, because for far too long, working class people in many states have not gotten a minimum wage increase for a really long time. And so even small businesses, yes, I'm going to say even mom and pops, in some states, they've gone more than a decade now without having to increase the minimum wage. So even mom and pops, guys, I'm like, I don't feel bad. Like, I don't. You had 10 years of not having to give your workers a single cent wage increase, according to law. And so I don't feel bad that now you have to go to 15 pretty quickly. But, because a lot of people like small businesses, everyone was like 15 by 2025, basically. Already the compromise. And that's too much, apparently. So now Kyrsten Sinema, who again, originally her reason for voting against this was not that she didn't support the $15 minimum wage, basically, but it was like procedural. She didn't think it belonged in the stimulus bill, has sort of said that that's all bullshit now, and she's working with Romney. So it says, Senators Mitt Romney and Kyrsten Sinema are working with a group of 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans. These are like the moderate wing. They call themselves like the group of 20, basically. Like the 10 shittiest Democrats and the 10 least shitty Republicans get together to try and like say like, oh, we're going to be moderates and we're going to hold like Joe Biden to account, and we're not going to be radically conservative like the Ted Cruz's and Josh Hawley's and Tom Cotton, right? But apparently this is what they're pushing. So they want a minimum wage compromise. They hope they can build bipartisan support It says here, 5 senators in the group, including Romney, confirmed the existence of the proposal to Forbes, though they were tight-lipped about specific details. Yeah, I'm not going to share them with you. Senator Lisa Murkowski told Forbes when asked if she knows specifics, echoing similar responses from Senators Angus King, Shelley Moore Capito, and Susan Collins. And so you can see all these moderate Republicans and Democrats are getting together, right? And of course, it's no coincidence, Joe Manchin, when he was asked about all this, Joe Manchin basically said, look, I support an $11 minimum wage. Yeah, it's 11, but look, it's 11 by 2025 almost certainly. It's too slow. It would be one thing if it's look, we'll go to 11 in 2 years, and then we'll freeze it to inflation. We'll link it to inflation. And okay, that might be a compromise because you're not going to get to 15, but you're going to get people a big wage increase quickly and then ensure that they don't fall further behind. And then you can fight again another day to get it up to 15. If you lock this in at 11, it's going to be really hard to raise it to 15 at another point. You're going to be stuck with the gradual escalator to $11 for the next 4 years. $15 isn't enough to live on anywhere, really. It might be more painful to live on a $15 minimum wage in certain states. There's no doubt that if you live in New York City, $15 doesn't go as far as if you live in a small town in Oklahoma. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that cost of living matters, right? That no reasonable person would disagree with that. No reasonable person would say, look, cost of living doesn't matter, because it does. But my argument is that $15 is already the compromise even in poorer parts of the country. So for me, it's not, we need 15 in New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and other big cities, and then something less everywhere else. It's that we need 15 in rural Oklahoma, and maybe you need 20 in New York, or 17, or 18, or 19 in New York. When people say that to me, the minimum wage can't be the same everywhere, some places it's more expensive, I'm like, okay, fine, but the reality is 15 is the baseline. That should be the baseline everywhere. And if big cities want to go higher, they can go higher, and they should go higher. Right? The fight for 15 was a fight for a $15 minimum wage 10 years ago. The fight for 15 started in 2012? Correct me, guys, when did it start? People in the chat. 2012 or so, right? It's been almost 10 years that people have been fighting for a $15 minimum wage. Right? It's been a long time that people have been fighting for that. So Leafy, you're saying your rent is an average $1,000 a month. If you think about that, you work 40 hours a week for $15 an hour. Times 4. Your rent is still taking up almost half your pay. Right? If you pay $1,000 a month. And in some places it's significantly higher than that. Yeah, Nathan is saying the fight for 15 started in 2012. Yeah, Nathan stopped by everybody. He said hi, chat. Everyone say hi to Nathan. Say, Nathan, how you doing, buddy? but 11 by whenever they're proposing it, it's bullshit. And look, this is another thing. Now, when Mitt Romney and Tom Cotton came around with their proposal a few weeks ago, right? They were like $10 an hour, but then they basically wanted to use it as a way to attack undocumented people. So Tom Cotton was like $10 an hour by 2025, and we're going to use it to demonize undocumented people. Right? Like, you know what I mean? It's wild. Bose Einstein says, Q says Trump is now a liberal, don't take the vaccine. Did they actually say that? Did they actually say that, Bose? Bose, I don't know. Bose, you're a funny... Bose is a funny character, but I actually can't tell if you're joking or being serious. So did Q say that? Like, Q's been really quiet, right? QAnon's been really quiet. Have they still been doing Q drops? Or like, after everything they predicted went wrong, are they like... You know what I mean? And so let me know. John Barledge says, hey, did you hear that Charles Booker is going to run for Senate? I did, and I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. Look, for those who don't remember, Charles Booker is, or was one of the candidates, for the Democratic primary in, Kentucky last election. And he ran for the nomination against Amy McGrath, right? And he almost won. It became quite close. And he didn't have a lot of intention. Yeah, I think a lot of people are saying it's the guy from that, the new HBO documentary really makes that case. That it's likely the guy that ran 8chan. But Q, like look, I don't know if QAnon is honestly, I have no clue. But Charles Booker ran this really good campaign and almost beat Amy McGrath for the nomination to go against Mitch McConnell. Now, let's be clear. I am not necessarily suggesting that Charles Booker would have won. I'm not necessarily suggesting that. Let's watch his, we can watch his ad that basically says that his ad for his potential 2022 campaign. But Charles Booker ran this really inspiring campaign based on grassroots activism, Medicare for all, Fight for 15, justice for Black Americans, specifically tapping into the anger and despair and sorrow around Breonna Taylor, but not exclusively her, of course, also George Floyd and all of those things that were happening last summer in the United States. He really tapped into that. Whereas Amy McGrath very much made a decision to be like, I am running as a Trump Democrat. I basically would support Brett Kavanaugh. I am going to run a very moderate campaign. I'm not trying to rock the boat. I'm not trying to do anything special. I'm just trying to basically be like a Republican with a D in my name, and I won't rock the boat. And she lost by like 17. And the Democrats spent like $100 million on her campaign. And so my argument was always that, one, I do think Booker would have done better than her in Kentucky. I do think that a Black working class left candidate would have done better than like a white moderate that like wants to brag about how conservative she is. Like, that's my belief. But more than just winning or losing, everyone say hi to Jishan. Everyone say hi. More than just winning or losing, it's like Charles Booker would have been the one to build some momentum. He would have been the one to build some actual legacy. Even in losing, he would have done something special. You know, Stacey Abrams is too much of a moderate for my taste to really to back her, even though I have great respect for what she did. But like, you know, she built a movement in Georgia, and that movement paid off in 2020. Right? Whatever you want to say about Stacey Abrams, right? Being kind of like a neoliberal, the fact of the matter is she built a successful movement. Right? And the Democrats won. They won Georgia. They won Georgia. They won both Senate seats, and they won the Electoral College votes in Georgia. And I think that Charles Booker has the potential to do the same in Kentucky. Now, the question is also going to and energize the Democratic Party. So I want to play you this video because it's very good. Okay, Bose is saying there are certain interviews, certain red state people say whatever Trump says, we will not follow the vaccine because of Q. That's true. I've heard some other Trump supporters sort of rationalize it by saying that Trump is being forced, like Trump is being pressured into telling us to take the vaccine, but that behind the scenes, we know the truth that Donald Trump would never make us do this, wouldn't want us to do this. So Donald Trump is either he's saying this, but he really means for us to not get it. Like, if you listen to him, the secret code is this is a decoy, right? I've heard that argument too, right? I've heard that argument too. Samantha says she's giving Charles Booker a monthly donation. He deserves it. I agree. I think, look, like, right now, a lot of people, without Bernie running, or a lot of people on this, because, you know, this channel really took off when it did as a supporting channel of Bernie Sanders. The reality is that, like, a lot of people were giving to Bernie, and then when Bernie was done, a lot of people were like, well, what do we do? Right? And it's supporting down ballot races can be a really good use of your money. Because that's where a lot of progressives have a chance to make a difference. But also, when you donate to like a primary campaign for like a smaller candidate, every dollar they get means more. Like, look, nothing against giving money to Bernie, because if I was an American, I would have definitely given lots of money to Bernie. But like Bernie got a ton of money. So your $5 maybe has more value going to Booker or going to Nina Turner than it would say going to Bernie Sanders, right? Just like the law of mathematics. If somebody only has a few $100,000, then your $10 means more to them than if they have 50 million, right? At least on certain issues, Leafy, you're right, that moderate Dems would sooner work with Republicans. On other issues, maybe not, right? Like, so on voting rights, clearly Republicans have shown themselves to be extremists, and there is some broad working together between progressives and moderates on voting rights. But yeah, you're right. On like economic issues, a lot of these moderate Dems would sooner unite with the Republicans than get workers $15 minimum wage. 100%. 100%. So like, yeah, I like Charles Booker's run. I think it'll actually build a movement. And again, I think this is why it matters. So I want to play this. I want to watch this with you guys because
They called us a long shot. Said the movement in Kentucky was impossible.
Again, he was not like a lot of the other candidates we were following. This was not like Jamal Bowman. This was not like Mondaire Jones. He was not seen as having any shot at all. at all.
Possible. But man, we proved them wrong. As we made our stand together, I could not have imagined the new world we were about to step into. The height of racial tension, the pandemic, and insurrection. While Kentuckians lost their livelihoods and homes, a handful of privileged politicians chose to continue criminalizing poverty. While our loved ones were brutalized, they chose to do nothing. But the movement chose to blossom. In the span of just a couple years, we've seen how quickly a new reality can unfold. How our choices can make a difference. When the power went out, we weathered the storm together. When the pandemic hit, we were there for our neighbors. When our sister's door
remember that, right? During the primary. Do you remember that image of all of those voters trying to vote, and like they were like making it so hard for voters during the primary, even in Louisville and in Lexington, the two cities of that state, to vote. And it look, I'm not necessarily saying that was the reason Amy McGrath won over Booker. It wasn't quite that close, but clearly, you could see the roots of these voter suppressions, right? Yeah, this is a great ad. It's great.
We must make together. It's a choice to adopt a Green New Deal for Kentucky and ensure a healthy planet for generations to come. A choice to guarantee quality health care for every man, woman, and child. A choice to ensure every person in Kentucky has more money in their pocket. A choice to move mountains and build a society where we all go to bed nourished, where we can all rest easy without worrying about our front door being busted down, where we come together.
God, you see that moment there? Like, guys, I don't want to cry on stream, guys, but that moment where he's putting his daughter to bed, right? And he references doors being kicked down, because that's clearly a reference, guys, to Breonna Taylor, right? And look, he's got a young black daughter, right? It really puts it in perspective that this is a man that not only has the right idea, because the ideas matter most, but that lived experience, right? Living the racism, living the discrimination. It's like Cori Bush. Cori Bush knowing what it's like to be homeless. You can't replace that. You can't learn that in university. You can't learn that, you know what I mean? You got to live it. You got to live that stuff, right?
Together, united, from the hood to the hollow, black, white, brown, to live in a commonwealth where everyone can thrive and reach for their God-given potential. That future is our choice. That's why today I'm formally announcing an exploratory committee for U.S. Senate. We will transform Kentucky. And Rand Paul, you know it too.
Look, this is big, right? Because let's be clear. Can you think of a bigger upgrade in the Senate than going from Rand Paul to Charles Booker? Going from Loeffler and Perdue to Ossoff and Warnock, that was a pretty nice upgrade. But imagine going from Rand Paul, one of the worst, most right-wing, most conspiratorial, anti-democratic ghoul of a senator, to going to Charles Booker, who would likely instantly become one of the 2 or 3 most left-wing senators. Can you think of a bigger upgrade? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Right? Kentucky is still quite a red state. If you look here, Rand Paul, historically, let's look at this. Rand Paul, if you look at his recent elections, where is that? Rand Paul has generally had a pretty easy go of it. Where is that? Rand Paul, according to this, like he won by like 15 in his last election. So, look, John, I might have to disagree with you here. You say like going from Mitch to Booker would be bigger. I'm not quite so sure. Now, I think in general, getting Mitch McConnell out of power as Senate Majority Leader was massive. But when I think of like the worst senators, I don't necessarily think McConnell is worse than Paul. Like, look, what you want to say about McConnell is like he's like, McConnell isn't spreading lies about COVID. He's actually going out there telling people to get the damn vaccine. Like, McConnell, like, is a monster in how he ran the Republican caucus. But as an individual senator, if I could choose to eliminate someone, I would pick Rand Paul over him, personally. Maybe let me know if I'm wrong on that. Let me know if I'm wrong. But like Mitch McConnell, Mitch McConnell is maybe you can make the argument that Mitch McConnell is worse in that he is more effective. But in terms of raw ideological swing, right, going from like a very conservative to a very progressive senator, I think that I don't think it's a contest. I don't think it's a contest. Look, we often bring this up. I want to bring it up here. This is a really good thing. This is actually a fun tool to look at. I think this is important because it gives you good perspective. So everyone, you guys can use that. You can kind of follow along here. This shows the voting records of senators and Congress people, right? House members. And it gives you like this general sense of what's happening. So for instance, you can see here that like Ted Cruz replaced with Beto. See, that's a good point. That's an interesting point. I still think Paul is worst. So if you look here, this shows voting records from most to least progressive, basically. In general, if you're in this corner over here, if you're in this corner over here, like this area, you are a progressive. If you're in this corner, you're a conservative, right? Now, one thing you might say about a Rand Paul type is that he's a bit more of a libertarian. So on some social issues, he'll vote correctly. But look how conservative he is on economics. There's really only 1 or 2 people that are worse than him, right? You have Mike Lee and Tommy Tuberville, right? Versus, well, let's look. Here's Mitch McConnell. Okay, here's Mitch McConnell. If you look at this, guys, we have to be real with ourselves. Take a look at this. That's Mitch McConnell. That makes him on economic issues to the center, to the left, for lack of a better term, of about 2/3 of the Republicans. Look at that. So this is what we talk about these things just to show, like, get a perspective for how bad things are sometimes in American politics, because it gives you a real sense of like how conservative, quote unquote, mainstream politics is. That's very true, raw material. That's very true. That's very true. But that's like an interesting perspective. It's like when we look at the House, because I've done this before, where people, and rightfully so, people criticize Pelosi, right? And we're like, we got to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. But here's Pelosi in the House. She's the blue dot. Which means that in the broad Democratic sphere here, she is to the left on her votes on both economics and social policy than about 2/3 to maybe 3/4 of the Democrats. Right? Because like all these people up here, these are conservatives. These are conservative Democrats and moderate Democrats. And these down here are like the progressives, right? Like in this area. Now, one caution with this is that it doesn't get certain types of people right. It marks AOC and the squad as moderates and Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush on social issues or on economic issues. But they're not actually moderates. What they are is that they don't always vote for the party on particular economic issues because they vote more progressively. Right? So here are the six, right? The six squad, the expanded squad, right? They all fit down here on this particular line. So it's not always good at getting ideological outliers, but it is good at showing in very broad terms where like the Congress is, right? It's good at showing that like there is no true like the parties are very separate now, more than in the past, right? If you go back to say the 70s, here's in 1970 something. Look at this in 1970, guys. Look at this in 1979 to 1981 in the House. Look at how less extreme things were. Do you see that? Do you see how close the Democrats and Republicans were? It's just interesting, isn't it? Look at that. There's at least a few cases where you have Democrats to the right of Republicans or Republicans to the left of Democrats. And you even have like a good old-fashioned Dixiecrat over here. Literally one of the most conservative people in American politics at the time was a Georgia Democrat. Basically a racist, like segregation supporting Democrat that was still in office. Right? And so this shows you a few things, right? It shows you that like the party polarization, yeah, it's one of the last Dixiecrats. If you go to the Senate, you might see something similar. This is the House in 1979. If you go back to the Senate at the time, you could see the Senate is a little bit more conventional, I suppose, but like not quite. Like there's a little bit more, but you can see here there's a bit more of a gap, but like the sides are more squished. There's no left wingers and there's no right wingers. This was like the broad neoliberal consensus, right? So it's an interesting little tool. If you ever want to use this for history or to understand where like Congress people sit relative to one another, it's a good basic tool. It's a good basic tool. So, like, yeah, I suppose we can have a debate about it, but my view is that in general, it's Rand Paul is on pure ideological terms, more conservative, more right wing than Mitch McConnell. But that it's fair to say, in many ways, that Mitch McConnell is particularly dangerous in what he's done. Well, actually, that's a good point, Nathan. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. It's the Keynesian consensus in a lot of ways. That's a good point, Nathan. That's a good point. Well, actually, let's take a look and going back to the 90s and see what happens here, because I wonder if in the 90s, say like we'll go to like 1993 to 95, right? You get a sense here similarly. The 90s, the Senate stays the same. Because by the 90s, you got, that's like the, end of history and stuff like that. This is the House in the 90s. So you see that the Democrats especially are definitely more to the right. There's very few Democrats that have any sort of unique positions. You do have people like Patricia Schroeder, who are a bit more weird. Then, of course, you have some other people, Where's Bernie on this, I wonder? See, Bernie here, even, I guess, on this model, is like a liberal, but not particularly so, I guess, on his votes. But Bernie can be a bit hard to judge because a lot of Bernie's positions don't get votes, right? It's actually interesting. I do want to play that because there's a real debate now, and I think it's something that shows some divide on the left, because a couple days ago, Rashida Tlaib called for the police to be abolished, right? And this is something that we definitely have to talk a bit about. And so Bernie responded, and Bernie does not want the police to be abolished. So you can hear this right here.
Your fellow progressive, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, reacted by saying this, and I'll put it up on the screen. I am done with those who condone government-funded murder. No more policing, incarceration, and militarization. It can't be reformed. Do you agree with her on that?
I'm sorry, who said that?
That was said by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan.
No, I don't. I think that what we need to do is to understand that there needs to be major police reform all across this country. We are tired of seeing the same thing week after week and year after year. We do not want to see innocent African Americans shot in cold blood.
Your fellow.
So this is it's interesting, right? Because Bernie and the squad are agree on so much. But I definitely think this is one of the things where I am more on Bernie's side, or excuse me, more on Rashida's side than Bernie. But I think it's a generational thing. Like, I wonder if it's a generational thing. Now, maybe ASX is saying that Bernie is hiding his power level. Bernie knows that abolishing the police is not popular. But I'm not sure. I think Bernie's a bit old school in some ways. Bernie back during his campaign always would say that he's a believer in reform of the police. But I think I agree with Rashida. I think I agree with Rashida Tlaib. I think that while it might not be feasible to abolish immediately, that while abolition could take time, that while all of these things are complicated, ultimately you cannot reform the police. Abolition isn't popular. Defunding the police depending on the specific definition, does have some level of popularity, at least in certain parts of the country. But abolishing the police is not really a popular position. Remember, Cori Bush is the only person in Congress, I believe, that ran on defund the police. I think. And she did it like during her primary and all of that, right? Like, I think that this is going to be a discussion for the left. Because again, I think this definitely is a generational thing. And I think Bernie represents something a bit more old school, and he believes that the police are reformable. But I think that, Rashida Tlaib's perspective is very different. And maybe that's based on their particular communities they represent. Maybe that's based on age. Maybe that's based on race. Maybe that's based on all those sorts of things. But it's an interesting debate. Like, that's one of the things. Karen says, "Are we live?" Yes, we are live, Karen. We are live. So thank you so much. Everyone say hi to Karen. Karen, thanks for stopping by. But, I mean, look, I think that it's definitely going to be a discussion that's gonna be a tough one for the left, because again, like, Bernie Sanders is undeniably like a legend, but I don't know if he's right on this one, guys, and I don't know if it's maybe this is one of those things that, like, it's like Bernie has done all he could. But, like, on this issue, the young people have to lead. I want to talk a little bit about Afghanistan. Because, in general, I do side mostly with the people that are like, there's no way Joe Biden's leaving Afghanistan, right? There's no way, right? Like, that's what a lot of people are saying, right? But I'm not 100% convinced. I want to read you Bernie's statement, because if you remember, Bernie Sanders, while he's initially supported Afghanistan, he did not stand with Barbara Lee. Bernie's been a long critic of that, and has always admitted he made a mistake in supporting the Afghanistan war. And so he says, "I applaud President Biden for making the brave and right decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Afghanistan and bring an end to the longest war in our country's history. We owe an enormous debt of gratitude to every U.S. and coalition service member who has served in Afghanistan since 2001, and we will never forget the over 2,300 U.S. service members that gave their lives there. We also remember over 100,000 Afghani civilians who have been killed in this war. The United States must remain committed to diplomatic, economic, and humanitarian support for Afghanistan, even as we bring this military intervention to an end. We must also make sure that in the future, the United States uses military force only when necessary to protect our national security, and when the objective is clear and achievable, and with the informed consent of the American people and the authorization of Congress." And so that's a good statement from Bernie. But like okay, look. Everyone in the comments right now, do you think the U.S. is actually out of Afghanistan by September 11, 2021? Yes or no? Or some other answer, but like, let me know. My view is probably not. But one thing I will say is that yesterday, and I covered it in my video on Biden yesterday, I made a video on this, which I will say not a lot of people watched. It didn't perform very well. I find a lot of people don't watch Biden videos because Biden's pretty boring. So good. But like, one thing is that there's no conditions. And a lot of journalists said it's odd that there are no conditions. Because usually you'll put conditions in to give yourself an excuse to break the promise. Right? You'll say, if conditions are met, we're ending our time in Afghanistan. Right? If conditions are met. But conditions will never be met. And Biden yesterday said, the only purpose of, as long as we have conditions, their only purpose is to trap us in Afghanistan forever. And so I do think it's interesting Biden and his people are saying that. It's the one reason I sort of maybe, kind of, possibly, sort of maybe, a little bit, a teensy bit, think maybe it might happen potentially. If I was going to give odds, like odds of it happening, I would say 5%. I would say 5%. Arlene says Biden is in the pocket of the military-industrial complex. No way is he pulling troops out of before his first term. I mean, that's a good question, a good point, Arlene. Although you might say, Arlene, that Biden could leave Afghanistan and go somewhere else, right? Biden could leave Afghanistan and go somewhere else. And it might be the case that the military-industrial complex is fine losing Afghanistan as a profit center if Biden gives them other profit centers. And let's also be clear that Biden is not ignoring the military. Like, remember, Biden is proposing an increase to the Pentagon budget. Biden has made it clear he wants an increase in the budget. He wants a $715 billion budget for the Pentagon, which is a slight increase from last year. It is less than what Trump was projecting for what he might do in his first year of a second term, but it is up $11 billion from the previous year. So $11 billion more for the military. Like, you know what I mean? So, who knows what's going to happen? But I think that maybe there's a chance that he could leave Afghanistan. But I am skeptical. I am skeptical. One final thing I want to talk about here is just cop and racism and right-wing hypocrisy. Right? So as we've been talking about on this channel, Daunte Wright was killed by Kim Potter. We've talked about this for the last couple days. If you haven't seen my latest video on it, do check it out after the stream. I'll drop the link here. But basically, is Biden making moves for an Iran deal in Afghanistan? I'm not sure, Bose Einstein. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Maybe Biden is planning to just reallocate the resources, or maybe Biden thinks that the Afghanistan war is not popular anymore, and that he can use it as a moment of symbolism, and still not piss off the military-industrial complex, because the U.S. can always fight more wars. But Afghanistan isn't popular anymore. But this is John Cardillo. He is a TV host. He was a former NYPD cop, massive account on social media, right? And this is him trying to smear Daunte Wright. Again, Daunte Wright was killed by a police officer. I think it's at the very least manslaughter, and it might be murder. And she has been charged, actually, as of earlier today. She's been charged with second-degree manslaughter. Remember, this was the cop that pulled out her gun, and then allegedly said that she meant to pull out her taser, shot Daunte Wright with her gun, and he died from his injuries of that gunshot wound. And so a lot of people were sharing this picture, which is of Daunte Wright with his young baby. It's a beautiful picture, right? It's a beautiful picture. But apparently this is another I don't even know if it's him. I honestly don't even know. But this is a picture allegedly of Daunte Wright holding a gun, looking ominous, basically, right? And so John here is like, the media's Daunte Wright as opposed to the real Daunte Wright. So what he's basically saying is the liberal media is conspiring to make this young black man look better than he is. Right? They try to make him look better than he is. Because, like, they're trying to make him look like he's this nice young father with his beautiful little baby and everything's fine. And, like, how could they do this to this young father? But really, you can see here, and I'm not using this term, but this is what they would say. He's just a thug, right? Like, you know, they're with the hoodie. They're giving him the Trayvon Martin treatment, right? And so this guy who like is like, oh, he looks like a thug. This guy had a bunch of pictures online. Yeah, like, look, it doesn't, whether it's actually a real picture or not, it actually does look Photoshopped now that you mentioned it, John Phantom. It actually does. But let's just say it's real. Look at this guy. Here's a picture of him with a gun. Here's another picture of him directly pointing a gun at the camera. This is him 5-6 years ago now. Right? Here's another thing of him from March of this year where he said, I better not be the only guy on Twitter whose sock drawer looks like this. And that's what? How many guns is that? Is that 4 guns? Is that 4 guns in his sock drawer? Right? Right? Like, all these other Republicans with their guns. Look, you got Lauren Boebert with her gun. You got Madison Cawthorn with his gun. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene with her gun. You got, actually, I can't name them off the top of my head, but you got all these Republicans with their guns. And so isn't it fascinating, guys? Isn't it fascinating that all of a sudden, the people that love guns and often support things like open carry law and support all of these things, at the end of the day, are like, a black man with a gun makes him look like a criminal. It really does show, like the racial politics of guns in the United States. It shows it in spades, doesn't it? Doesn't it? So guys, I'm going to wrap a little. Normally we wrap between 10 and 10:30, but I'm just I'm a little tired tonight, so I do want to maybe just take a bit of an early evening. But before I go, I do want to share a few things with you. One, if you want to support the channel, one way you can do that is you can do so on Patreon. You can go to that link and support the channel. You can also support the channel by becoming a member here on YouTube. If you want, you can check out the Discord. The Discord is a great place to hang out with folks in between streams and all these sorts of things. Really great place to have fun with some of the other supporters of the channel. If you haven't yet, also follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. It's that's, I'll often comment on things that maybe I don't make videos on, but that, I think are important. Not as active on there, but I do share videos there from time to time. You can certainly check out my Facebook. Where's that? It's a great place to get some things. But guys, if you want to, because people often ask how they can support the channel, and a lot of people don't have the means to support financially, and I totally get that. So one of the things you can do is just watch the content. If you watch the YouTube videos, it makes it more likely that YouTube is going to show them to potential new audiences. And it also means in many ways that my videos will be more likely to even go to some of my infrequently viewing subscribers. And in addition to all that, the majority of this channel's earnings still come from ad revenue. And so every time you watch a video and you see an ad, in a small little way, it supports the show. If you've been watching things by Kyle Kalinske and other progressive media commentators, a lot of us are seeing lower views right now in the post-election period. And in particular, our videos are being shown less often to non-subscribers. And so if you can share my videos on Reddit, on Facebook, on Twitter, that would be very helpful. And if you can let people know about the channel, that would be very helpful. Because right now, it's a mixture probably of algorithm changes and also just people tuning out because post-election, everyone's a bit tired of politics. But if you can help the channel, doing that would help me greatly. Checking out the channel every day and all those sorts of things. So guys, have a good one. Thank you again for supporting me. Thank you for everyone with the very generous super chats. Thank you for the new channel memberships and all that. I will see you with new videos every day as I often do. And I'll see you next week for a stream again. Have a good one, guys.